Andy Vazquez of NJ.com, Jets beat reporter. He just got back from camp. Andy, how was it? Is there a new vibe? Because it seems like there is, at least from what we're seeing on social media.
Yeah, it's definitely, the players are going out of their way to be very complimentary of Aaron Glenn and everything he's done since he's gotten here. And it's been a different feel with Glenn. No matter what you think about him, he's not as polished as Salah, but he comes off as an authentic, representation of who he is. He's pretty much the same all the time. If he doesn't like a question, he's going to push back on it. He's not, shy about giving direct instructions and relaying direct expectation to his players.
Hmm.
Um, and it's always going to be like that with a new regime in terms of a different vibe. So, we still haven't really encountered any adversity here. It's been all good things. The Jets have obviously gone a different direction at quarterback, and everything surrounding that was kind of close to adversity, but not really. It's all optimism right now. They're 0-0. It's July still, a long way to go. So I don't want to make any huge judgments on where this team's at, but it's definitely a different vibe in terms of you know the organization. It just seems like he's very ready. Aaron Glenn is very ready for this opportunity. Um, I think he's credited Dan Campbell a lot for putting him in positions as a head, to be the head coach for a day. Seems
Hmm.
like a good way to get out of some work to me if I'm Campbell. But like he said, he's drawn up a training camp schedule, an off-season schedule before. He's
Hmm.
thought about how he would incorporate different things into it that he didn't have in Detroit, and he seems very sure-footed. And again, it's easy to be sure-footed when not much has happened. But yeah, I think it's just a different vibe because of everything that's happened this offseason too, in terms of the Jets actually getting contract extensions done with their most talented players before they had to, and without any drama. I mean, all of that contributes to the optimism and the good vibe out there.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird feeling. I said this before when I had you on right before the draft. It was kind of weird because it was just quiet. There wasn't a lot coming out of the building. It seemed like whatever leaks were there were rooted out. It just seems like there's finally somebody in charge, and I hope that the team gets a toughness from that and a toughness from Aaron Glenn because he seems like he's actually like coaching, like he's actually involved in a lot of things going on there. And not to say that Salah wasn't involved, but at least from a visual standpoint, I mean, I was at camp all last season, and he would sit on the sidelines. He wouldn't engage. It seemed much. He had a clipboard in his hand, but it didn't really. He seemed like a very much a CEO type of coach, not really more of a hands-on. So I like Aaron Glenn. I think he's got that difference about him because he played the game, and I think that really means something. So now
I agree. Yeah, with all
I
of
know,
that. That all checks out with me.
yeah. So I know it's early. Um, how does Fields look? Because the season's going to live or die on his legs and his arm. Anything
Yeah,
to deem from practice yet?
I think you're gonna find out more on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week when they're in pads for the first time. This is it's training camp and there's more of a sense of urgency, but the actual structure you're seeing on the practice field is very similar to what we saw in OTAs and mandatory minicamp at this point. So
Hmm.
a little bit more pushing and shoving, or physicality at the line of scrimmage between receivers and cornerbacks, stuff like that. But I think you're gonna find out more next week. But he was up and down in his first practice. Um, the first series came out, found Brees Hall right away. Um, had an off target, a very off target throw to Garrett Wilson, and then a bomb, just a beautiful throw and a beautiful catch to down the right sideline to Garrett Wilson for. I'm not going to call it a touchdown because I think the corner would have made an effort to push him out or
Hmm.
tackle him, but it was still a huge gain, a beautiful deep ball, and kind of a preview of what those guys can be together. And I think that's what you want to see. He found Braylon Allen on the next series out of the backfield. Sauce, or I'm sorry, Michael Carter looked great in coverage on Garrett Wilson on a crossing route. and they didn't connect, but it wasn't a real dangerous throw. The only real bad throw was his second throw of practice, and it was kind of, you know, a wounded duck that was in Garrett's direction and could have, ended up in the hands of a couple defenders. So that's not what you don't want to see, but I don't think
Yeah.
you're going to make any huge judgments, uh, especially negatively on the first day. They're just coming back trying to retain what they got in the off-season program, and overall, it was limited, just 2 series. I think he had something like 10 reps, maybe. I can't remember the final totals off the top of my head in my notebooks on the other side of the room, but um, I think it's something like 5 for 8. And again, I thought he did what he had to do today, come up with a good play, and yeah, no major issues, and that's what you want to see at this very early stage of camp.
So online, we had a lot of people kind of freaking out because JJ started on the pup list. And my opinion is almost every player that I can remember that's had a major injury the year before starts off on the pup list for the following camp. Nothing to be worried about there, right?
No, not even a little. It was expected. Aaron Glenn told us a couple months ago he'd probably start on the pup list. I'm trying to think back on some examples of returnees. Carl Lawson, when he had that pretty decent year coming after the Achilles, I'm fairly certain he started on pup, even if it was only for a couple days. Brees was on pup deep into that season when he returned.
Mhm.
There was somebody last year. I'm not remembering who it was, but yeah, it's completely normal. It's very easy to take him off of pup. It's not going to be a long process. Or if they wanted to take him off tomorrow, I'm sure they'd ramp him up, but he could be practicing, within a day. So it's not
Cool.
a huge deal, and I wouldn't read into it all. And obviously, he sent his message out of reassurance. We've seen him working off to the side. I didn't see him today, but I saw him working off to the side, a couple months ago, and he looked good. So I'd expect them to ease him slowly. It could even be midway through camp, but you know they're going to work him back slowly, and as long as they're going to work him back slowly. I'm sure the first few games of the season too. So
Yeah.
that's not alarming or abnormal. It will be a year in week 2 since the injury, so it's easy to remember that. And defensive end is a different position, especially with the Achilles than quarterback.
I said that before online where I'm not expecting much from him early on just because it's an Achilles. He's an edge player, he's an edge rusher. And I think of all the positions, you have to have that quickness off the line. And if your Achilles, it may be healthy, but obviously there's atrophy that occurs there, so he may not get going, I think, till like week 5 or 6, and that's completely normal. But
Yeah,
from his standpoint, it kind of sucks because if he can't get the numbers that he thinks he can get, you know, he may not get the type of extension that he wants. I think the Jets need to keep him. I mean, obviously they picked up his 5th year option, but I would love to see him get extended just like Sauce and like Garrett. But he needs to be able to put up the numbers. He has to be able to perform. And I think it's going to be a little while before he's able to get going. Now, rewinding a little bit, I know you mentioned it before. What did you think of the contracts for Sauce and Garrett? Because it finally looks like the organization did something professional, got it done. Not only got it done, but told the players they were going to get it done. Um, Gained that trust, got them done, and they have an out. It seems like after like 2027, if things don't go their way, they can kind of take a little bit of a hit and get out of the contract. This seems like a win on both sides.
yeah, I think it is a good deal for the players. It's a good deal for them to lock these guys up, um, at the top of the market value, but in markets that have been exponentially rising.
Right.
We're not talking about over seasons. We're talking about in the last year. Like each of those markets have jumped around 33%, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yep.
And those deals could look like steals soon. So especially if Garrett, with Garrett, there's some projection there, obviously, because his numbers haven't been, when you look at especially receivers who've been extended after 3 years. I mean, I think St. Brown with the Lions was the last one before him. I might be missing one there, but his production was much higher than where Garrett's was. And just real quick to jump back to what you were saying about Jermaine Johnson, the fact that the Jets had some flexibility with Garrett and like, projecting what he should be in a functional offense. I
Hmm.
mean, I think if he shows I don't think the numbers necessarily have to be there, but if he's, if that the last 8 games of the season and a per 17 average is extrapolating out to that, or if he's showing, even if he's not getting the sacks, if he's showing the same ability or higher than before. I mean, I don't think the numbers have to be there necessarily for them to do an extension, but still, it may not be exactly at the value he wants. But I liked, what they did with Garrett. I thought that was going to be the sticky one because, if he didn't, you know, as unhappy as he was last year, you weren't 100% sure he wanted to stick around. He could have very easily been like, look, I should be if I was in a functional offense, I should be getting paid like a top 3 or 4 receiver. He didn't do that. He ended up being, a little bit lower than that, fifth highest paid. Um, and they could have said, like, your production doesn't merit an extension right now, and it doesn't merit it at, $32.5 million a year. But they found the middle ground there, and that to me is, not something that would have happened before this offseason. I mean, just look back at the Quinn and Williams extension that should have been the most by the book extension. The market was set at the beginning of that offseason with some other players. Quinnen fit at the top of that market. He ended up getting that deal at the top of the market, but it took until like 2 days before training camp. And then you listen to Hard Knocks and hear Woody Johnson being like, "That's a lot of money." Um, that I shouldn't have broken out the Woody Johnson impression, but my point was, um, that seemed like, why was that so hard? It should have been the easiest extension ever. And then both of these were extensions that could have been contentious, and they got done before camp, a week before camp. And both players talked about what a pleasant experience it was negotiating. So, I mean, that kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah, night and day from the old regime to this regime. And I don't think the Jets could have in any way told Garrett, your production doesn't warrant the contract because of, was it 7 or 8 quarterbacks that were throwing him the ball?
Yeah, seven.
Right?
And I'm with you. Look, I'm just
It's
saying,
a,
if
the
they
numbers
would
he
have in
put
the
up,
past.
right? The numbers he
Yeah,
put up based on the situation that we put him in, he deserves every penny.
I am 100%. I think it'll be a bargain deal in a couple years. I have, I've really enjoyed watching this kid, and he seems like I don't like it when media members are like, oh, this dude's a good guy. I don't know Garrett Wilson.
Right.
I interact with him. He's very nice to me, but I'm a media member. Like, it would be dumb not to be nice to us. But
Yeah.
he seems like he does all the right things. I don't think, you're getting an inauthentic version of him. I think he cares. Um, and I think he does want to. Obviously, there's evidence now that he wants to be here, and I think it was reasonable for him to be extremely frustrated with the way things have gone. So
Last question. Do you think Garrett is here if Aaron Rodgers is here?
I don't know. I don't. I mean, I think if that extension's on the table, he's still here. But I think, because it would be like, Garrett's not. Uh, Garrett seems to be a pretty smart guy,
Yeah.
and it would be short sighted for him to not take that deal because this guy is going to be around one more year. But I don't think it would have been this offseason would have been anything. Obviously, it would have been a completely alternate universe. Um, I think more and more, as you see the stuff around Rodgers and you see the way this team and what they did with getting rid of the veterans, and guys, a lot of the veterans were like good influences in the locker room, but I think also you did need this fresh start. You do need these younger guys like Garrett and Sauce taking on leadership roles, which they'll now be forced to do with guys like Aaron Rodgers and CJ Mosley not around. Um, I think, yeah, it's just hard to even envision that reality or that universe. But I think he would still be here. But yeah, I think everything would be different about. We'd be having a much different conversation right now, and I don't know how the whole power dynamic within the organization and the offseason extensions and all that stuff would have gone.
Thanks for the time. I appreciate it. I know you're busy. First camp in the books. First, not first camp, first practice of camp in the books. First time for the new coach, Aaron Glenn. It must have been cool for him, honestly. Um, you know, starting his career here and now starting his head coaching career here. So I'm happy for him, and I just hope that we have a competitive season. So I'll have you on again at some point, maybe at the end of the camp before preseason. We'll see, but I think we're gonna have a lot to talk about this year.
Me too. And anytime. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.